That's Oklahoma 2022, and there is a link to the Google Doc transcript of this recording. Slide 2. What we will cover today. First, we're going to establish social media accessibility as community care. Before we can begin any of these practices, we need to remember why we're doing what we're doing. Then we're going to work through an inaccessible example post together, pointing out the areas for improvement, and then the final accessible post solution at the end. We'll do some additional practices and platform-specific workarounds. And finally, after this presentation, I've provided a list of resources for further reading. Given the time constraints of covering many topics in 45 minutes, I'm going to include all of the tools that I used, as well as some helpful resources for each area that we discussed today. Slide 3, community care. Image description, angled tablet with a queer disabled couple kissing, and non-binary person on their phone. The flat phone with a disability activism mural, including a wheelchair user, blind person, and hands doing the sign language symbol. This was a project for Access Now, and the screen mockups are from L-Store Graphics. Slide 4, access beyond compliance. Number 1, be open to more than one perspective. We need to hold spaces for multiple disabilities and intersecting identities. Number 2, put disabled people above compliance. No amount of certificates will ever compare to lived experience and collaborative problem solving. If someone says it doesn't work for them, trust them. And number 3, embrace mistakes. I know I've made plenty along the way. It's a journey, not a destination. We must always adapt our techniques and learn new practices as technology and society change. So let's get started together today. Slide 5, working through an inaccessible post. Slide 6, 2 images of an example social media post. On the left side, we see the social handle up at the top, all in lowercase 1 line, and a very bright green inaccessible post that I had fun creating. There is yellow header text, all uppercase, that says accessibility, but it's spaced out and stacked on 3 lines to the left. Then we have really tiny body text in a really hot pink color that says, insert an inspirational quote here about seeing ability over disability, designing for, not with, and whatever else gets gold stars, even though, ironically, this post clearly isn't even accessible. At the bottom is some random clip art I found on Wikipedia Commons of a universal wheelchair symbol frowning in front of stairs and a happy universal wheelchair symbol rolling up around. I don't know what that has to do with social media accessibility, but you know. And then we have the social handle small text vertically, like rotated off to the bottom right corner. To the right, we have an example of an inaccessible post caption. So we're using a lot of italics, bold, emojis for screen reading purposes. It says, don't you just love when people don't make X wheelchair symbol accessible wheelchair symbol X content? No clapping hands, caption clapping hands, needed clapping hands, asterisk, 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 image of accessibility with text and the most generic access graphic ever. Hashtag social media, hashtag ability, not disability. Slide 7. The first thing we want to address is the social handles and usernames. In the example, I have a little screenshot. The social handle is all lowercase and 1 word. Not all social media platforms display handles in Pascal case or camel case. Pascal case is when you capitalize the first letter of each of your word, and camel case is when you capitalize the second, third, or fourth word, so the first word remains lowercase. In order to make it accessible, we need to separate the words in your account name with characters so that screen readers can differentiate words. Some examples are social underscore handle, social dash handle, social dot handle. It's also kind of a good practice to make sure they're the same across all social media platforms, so a user doesn't have to remember different handles. Slide 8, contrast ratios and color blindness. To the right, I have a graphic of 3 color blocks. We have the green, which has the hex code of 00CA51. And then we have the yellow, which was used for the header and social tag, with a hex code of E0E300. And then hot pink, which is what we used for the body text, with a hex code of CA0051. When I applied these codes to the WebAIM contrast checker, green to yellow, it failed with a contrast ratio of 1.58 to 1. And when I did green to hot pink, it failed with a contrast ratio of 2.63 to 1. Now, in order to get AA compliancy, which is what most people strive for color accessibility, you need a minimum of 4.5 to 1 for regular text and 3 to 1 for large text or user interface objects, so graphics, outlines on form fields, etc. Large text is anything over 18 points or 14 points bold. For AAA compliancy, you actually want 7 to 1 ratio for regular text and 4.5 to 1 for large text and UI elements. Well, I know looking at this, you might think, well, I can tell the difference between these colors. Green is opposite to hot pink, and this yellow is quite bright. However, you'll see on the next slide, slide 9, once we drop it down to grayscale, you see how the actual contrast ratio works. We have the colored version with the green, yellow, and hot pink. And to the right, we have the monochromatic view, which shows the light gray against the mid gray, which is like okay, but not the best. And the body text is completely hidden, especially with the thin points. When we're talking about color contrast, it's not necessarily like opposite ends of the color wheel contrast. We're talking about the actual hue value. So the greater the contrast, the more accessible it will be across multiple forms of color blindness. On slide 10, I actually created a chart where I had uploaded these 3 colors to the CoBlinder color blindness simulator. In the top row, we have trichromatic view, which is no color blindness. We have the original green, yellow, and hot pink. But to someone with protanomaly or red wheat cones, it kind of looks more olive green, a sunnier yellow, and a purple pink. Protanopia, which is red blind, the green looks like a honey mustard, the yellow looks like a golden yellow, and the hot pink really looks like a purple gray. Deuteranomaly, which is the green wheat cone, the green looks more like a soft leaf green, the yellow is more of a cream color, and the hot pink is more of a dusty fuchsia. And someone with deuteranopia or green blind, the green is more golden brown, the yellow is peachy cream, and the hot pink is Bailey's brown. With trichromatic or blue week, the green is more turquoise, the yellow is like an actual pale greeny gray color, and the hot pink is a berry pink. With tritanopia or full blue blind, greens can look like a darker cyan, yellow looks like a pale lavender, and hot pink looks like a dark coral. With blue cone monochromacy, green looks like teal green, yellow looks like a light chartreuse color, and hot pink is like a wine color. And finally, with achromatopsia or monochromacy, they obviously see mid-gray, light gray, and dark gray. Slide 11. So a summary for color contrast and blindness is that we need to test the ratio of 2 colors. You need a minimum of AA compliance, and try to use AAA when you can. Then you also want to consider the color relationships across levels of blindness. The example you saw on the previous slide is why we never rely on color alone to convey a message. Green won't always appear as green, and red won't always appear as red. So we can't use that as a pass-fail element. You would need a check mark or an X. Slide 12. Typography and readability. To the left, I have screenshot close-ups of the inaccessible points. So as we can see, our header is stacked and hard to read. We put the letters across multiple lines, which is not the worst, but all of the characters themselves are similar. Like the C's are very closed off. And if you were to maybe take a step back from the screen or squint your vision a little bit, those might appear as O's from far away. We also have a screenshot of the body text, which is extremely small, and it's very tight kerning. The line height isn't that good either. So it's really hard to pay attention to a full paragraph when you have some elements bolded, some elements italic, some elements with different stroke weights. And finally, we have the social media handle that changed direction. So, a user would have to bend their head sideways just to see what's going on. Now, typography itself is subjective. I disagree when people say there are fully accessible fonts or fully non-accessible fonts. To me, it really depends on the purpose, the amount of text, as well as the emotion you're trying to convey. If you're using a header with only 6 characters, then you don't have to worry about how certain characters will look next to each other. So you can get away with more playful fonts for headers. Whereas body text, to me, that's where the most information is held, and that's where we want to be much stricter with the accessibility guidelines. We want to make sure that there's character distinction, proper spacing, and it's easy to read. As well as emotions, Comic Sans is a notorious example where some people have a very bad attachment, whether designers hate it because they don't think it's professional enough, or there have been people in the autistic community who don't like it because it reminds them of being treated like children or not having autonomy in their organizations. I had a conversation with Catherine Hagarty who discussed that. Yet to others, they love using it. It's a very accessible font and it makes things easy to read. Slide 13. So some guides for typography and readability. You want to use a larger base font size, a minimum of 12 point for body copy. If you have a post that has a lot of text, break down those images onto multiple slides so that you don't have to cram it all in. Like, no one can read 6 points on a tiny screen at 1080 square pixels at 72 resolution. Increase your header sizes in increments from the base size for hierarchy. If you have a header 1, you want to make sure maybe it's 2 times the body font because we can't rely on color alone for that. You can do style differences, but it's good to have a good hierarchy in sizes. Minimum spacing for the web content accessibility guides, which I've been hearing people call WCAG, and I realized that I've always done the acronym my whole presentation career. So for minimum spacing, which is all based on the font size, you want your line height to be 1.5 times your font size, your paragraph spacing 2 times the font size, your word spacing 0.16 times, and your letter spacing 0.12 times the font size. If we have a minimum 12-point body copy, your line height is going to be 18 points. Your paragraph's going to be at least 24 points. You want to have a little bit of kerning. You don't want to ever use negative kerning because that just mushes the letters all together and it becomes very hard to read. Add more breathing room. You don't need to cram it all in one spot. And don't be afraid to explore. If you're going to play with something, play with one element, not the entire post. You don't need to over-design the whole thing. Slide 14. Well, how do we know if a typeface is readable or not? Especially for body copy, because this is where we do not want to give people headaches. There's a typeface readability test we can do. On the left, I have the following characters: capital B, 8, capital C, capital O, 0, lowercase c, lowercase o, a number 1, a capital I, a capital L, a lowercase I, and a straight slash. If we type that sequence when we're browsing for a typeface, what you're doing when you search for the results is to check out individual character distinctions. This is Atkinson hyperlegible. So the 8 is differentiated from the B by having the top of the 8 a smaller size. Now, this font was created by the Braille Institute. The capital C and the O, while they're similar-ish in width, the C cuts off at a big enough spacing that if you were to blur this, you could tell that there's a definite gap. The 0 uses the slash through it and a slightly thinner width. This is my personal favorite for body text. And a good readability test too is to squint and go further away from your screen or blur it. Luckily, I have low vision. All I have to do is take off my glasses and I can't see a thing. might give you a better idea of how much kerning to use as well, because each typeface is built differently. Example, I had a client where I think we were using pop-ins for headers, and the 0.12 kerning size was too much because the typeface already had a naturally wide kerning level. So use your better judgment. Slide 15, authentic and representative graphics. To the left, we have this very generic image of the universal wheelchair symbol with a frowny face because they're in front of stairs and that's bad. And then it's like a really happy wheelchair user symbol because yay, we have ramps. I'm laughing at this because I see this all the time. As a wheelchair user myself, I find it hilarious. What do ramps even have to do with social media? You know, I'm talking to you today about digital media accessibility. Take the time to find graphics that actually represent disability. You can do this by hiring disabled artists. So I've created sets of graphics for multiple clients before. Search for series that are inclusive. Adobe Stock's getting a little better, as well as Disabled in Here is a great stock image and illustration campaign actually created by Black, Indigenous people of color with disabilities. But at the very least, if you don't even know where to start, make sure it's relevant to the specific accessibility you're addressing. If you're doing a post about captioning for people who are deaf of hard of hearing, then why are you throwing in the wheelchair icon? We want to actually honor the uniqueness of disability by having real, authentic representation. And that really does come down to hiring disabled people. That will always be my go-to. Slide 16, alt text and image descriptions. Now, before we even get into the inaccessibility of the post that I had made with this, let me break down the differences because everybody thinks they're the same thing or that they can be used interchangeably, and they're not. These are two different elements. For social media accessibility especially, you need both. Alt text can sometimes not be read out by screen readers. Alt text is coded. It goes into the image itself. In HTML, it's quite literally the tag of your image source, file, whatever, and then the alt role in an image tag. So when we apply our alt text to social media under an app settings, it shows up in the image tag in code. But as I said, not all screen readers pick this up, which is why we do image descriptions. Sometimes they're called visual descriptions, IDs, or accessibility, but these go into the caption of your post. This is where we get into detail and inclusivity. You can go a lot further than you can with alt text because good alt text should have about 100 to 150 characters max. Whereas image descriptions go in your caption, so you can do them as much as you want. You want to start from the most relevant content to the background elements and specifics. Slide 17. This is a screenshot of the alt text and another screenshot of the image description that I did for this inaccessible post. This screen capture is actually showing the desktop Facebook image upload. There's a little option on the left called alternative text. You can use auto-generated alt text or custom alt text. Hint, this is the inaccessible example that used the auto-generated alt text. And what does it say? Maybe an image of text. Well, that doesn't describe anything. How on earth would a blind person be able to understand everything about this image? So never rely on auto-generated alt text. The algorithms are not there yet. You always have to double check to make sure it's correct if you are using it. And then in just a little screenshot in the bottom right corner, I had put a really generic image description from the inaccessible social media caption. It says, image of accessibility, written with text and the most generic access graphic ever. You can't just say image with text because no one would know what that text is. Slide 18. Tips for writing descriptions. Image descriptions go in the caption, not the comments. If your image descriptions are quite long and they are overflowing, then you can pin them at the top of your comments. What happens is if you put your image descriptions in the comments, when other people comment, the algorithm will move it to most relevant at the top or most popular at the top. So if you don't pin it, a screen reader could get lost through hundreds of comments just to try to get to the image description. Never assume race or gender, but include it in your image descriptions. Haben Girma discusses the importance in our descriptions because many blind users won't know the ethnicity of a person. With the racism in our society, we automatically assume white, and it's not the case. The world is full of diverse people with multiple identities. If you don't know the gender or the race of the person you are describing, stick to gender-neutral terms. Do not assume a gender in a picture or the gender of someone in a graphic if you didn't make the graphic. And note skin tone instead. So example, I would be a light-skinned individual. When you're writing a description, focus on the purpose of the visual first. What is the information you are conveying in this post? If you're doing an advertisement for a shirt, then describe the details of the shirt rather than the background. You want to write out all text elements, or you can note if it's placeholder text. So I would write in the image description, lorem ipsum placeholder text. Your alt text should be all the text. And then your image description should be all the text plus descriptions of supporting elements. Finally, write in a style that's comfortable for you. Descriptions can be short, blunt, very descriptive, expressive, creative, long, etc. The writing style doesn't matter. So many people get hung up on, I don't do image descriptions because I feel like I don't know how to do them well. If you look back to my first image description I ever wrote compared to the detail I put into it now, they're completely different. As long as you've used these techniques, the way you write it, that's not the most important thing. You have to get started somewhere. And the only way we feel more comfortable with these is if we keep doing them. Slide 19. Captions, emojis, and hashtags. To the left, we have that same image of the inaccessible caption. The first line here we have, don't you just love when people don't make accessible content? I know that's sarcasm because I wrote it, but someone who is neurodivergent might not pick up on that context. You need to make sure that you're marking the tone of what you're writing. Another thing is to avoid special characters, overstyling, and limit emojis. I see it all the time. They're using italics, they're copy and pasting special characters to make their content look really cool. Well, guess what? Screen readers will read out the actual character description. If you throw in emojis everywhere like we did in this example, that will read X, wheelchair symbol, accessible, wheelchair symbol X. The no caption needed to be no, white skin, clapping hands, caption, white skin, clapping hands, needed, white skin, clapping hands. And then all of these symbols will read asterisk, 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 asterisk. So someone with a screen reader might think they're in a loop or a glitch when we're using italics and then bold and then uppercase, lowercase, all of these different things. It also makes it very hard to read. So just as we talk about typography accessibility, that comes into play here. The hashtags here are inaccessible because they do not use camel case or Pascal case. If you are unsure how your caption reads on screen readers, there are plenty of free text-to-speech apps that you can download and have it play back what you've typed out. Every screen reader kind of has a different way of reading out content, so it's not 100% accurate, but it gives you an idea. Another thing I want to mention is the way we use our wording. I've capitalized ability and, access and ability, not disability here in the example because I find it dehumanizing. Non-disabled people tend to use language that goes around disability rather than just using the word disability or disabled or person with a disability. I don't care if it's identity or person first. For me, puts a hierarchy of other, where disabled people to non-disabled people are considered other. They are valued by their ability, and they are only focused on what we can do, where nobody tends to let us embrace the things we can't do or the things we need access for. And I think it adds more barriers than it removes. This kind of language is really humiliating, and I'm not a fan of it. Other disabled people might disagree. It's highly personal. But for me, if we can at least come to a place in society where we can use the darn word, then we can open up so many barriers and actually get to the root of problems. Slide 20, applying the techniques for an accessible post. Slide 21. To the left, we have the fixed post image. There is the social handle at the top that we changed to social_handle, so it can now be read from screen readers. The image itself, we fixed the contrast. The background is now a blue, which contrasts with the white header text with a 3.5:1 ratio. That is a double A pass for large text, and this text is around 32 points, so that's perfect. The blue against the black body text is a 5.97:1, which is a full double A pass. And then at the bottom, we added a light blue banner. That contrasts with black with a 9.5:1 ratio, which gives us a triple A compliance, which is really good because our social handle is a smaller font size. We have Myriad Pro for the header in uppercase at 32 points. I wanted to do a little quote fail here because as a designer, I know we always like to test the boundaries of what a graphic can be. And this is my example of just choosing one element to play with. So I did still cut off the A from accessibility. I increased the kerning to make sure that each letter could be distinguishable from far away. And I picked a sans serif font that you can tell the difference between the capital I and the capital L. The body text says we must design with disabled people, not just for them. Social media access is a basic human right. And I bolded the words with and human right. Instead of using italics, underline, all of these different stylings, we just stuck to one to emphasize the things we really wanted to emphasize. And then we have the social handle at the bottom right corner as well. So I chose Atkinson Hyperlegible for both the body and the footer because I wanted that to be the most readable content. We want people to be able to read from far away and right away. The font size is 12 points for the body and the line height's 18 points. And I did do actually 8 points for the footer. I did do a small one there because also the social handle is available on the username above. I took liberty there. It may not be 100%, but it is far more improved than it was. Another thing, we actually have a graphic to the right that I'm going to explain on the next slide because that's in the image description, but it's way more inclusive graphic from a disabled artist, yours truly. And I drew an Asian non-binary person in a power wheelchair holding their coffee cup with a straw. They have a trach tube in their neck. They have piercings, shaved sides, head in a bun, a really cute yellow bag. I did this graphic for Pause and Effect, and we wanted to make sure that we were being diverse and inclusive in our graphics. Slide 22. If we go into a screenshot of the Facebook upload post, we can see the alternative text here that I did for the post is custom. I like to keep my alt text a little more basic than my image description. That way, you're not repeating the same thing twice. It gives them a little bit of a differentiation, and people can skip the image description if they don't really care to read it. For my custom alt text here, I wrote, accessibility. We must design with disabled people, not just for them. Social media access is a basic human right. At social_handle, wheelchair user art. If you noticed, I used the actual words at and underscore rather than the characters for it, because sometimes with alt text, it doesn't read out characters. So if you just put the at symbol, it might read it out weird. Also, if you're writing out the person's name, write out the pronunciation of their name. For instance, my last name is Oddi. If I type in Oddi, all screen readers read it Oddi. So I put OH-DEE on my alt text. And slide 23, to the left here, we have the fixed caption. Let's read through it together. Now the post caption says, don't you just love when people don't make their content accessible? /sarcasm, wheelchair emoji, tongue sticking out emoji. ID, text graphic, accessibility. We must design with disabled people, not just for them. Social media access is a basic human right. Bottom tag, at social_handle. Vector art, a non-binary Asian person in a power wheelchair holding a coffee with a straw. Their hair is in a bun with shaved sides. They have piercings, a trach tube, and a red outfit. A yellow purse hangs from the side of their chair. Hashtag social media, hashtag disability, hashtag say the word. First things first, we used readable captions that notes sarcasm. Similar ones are /JK or /joking or /ranting. You can note the emotions that we use in a post because you can't get emotions off text alone. We reduced the emojis and grouped them together at the end for better legibility. I do a maximum of like 2 emojis in my whole post. We have a detailed image description that started from the most relevant information, which was the text in this case, to a more detailed version of the vector graphic. Now, this is also for affirming identities. If you noticed, I boldly said a non-binary Asian person. Right off the bat, someone without vision is going to know and get a better idea of this person. And I'm all for affirming identities. We need to celebrate people's race, ethnicity, gender, sexualities, pronouns. We need to embrace our age, our size, our descriptions of ourselves, everything. We used accessible hashtags with Pascal Case, and we used more inclusive tags. So I did the hashtag say the word here specifically because it is a whole campaign on social media. I believe in embracing disability, not being afraid of it. And social media, we could see there's capital M, capital S. So now screen readers will be able to read the word. Slide 24, additional practices. Slide 25, content notices and trigger warnings. To the left, I have an example that says, content notice, ableism, medical trauma. If your post has any sensitive material, provide a warning. If you're using a social media platform that has carousel images like Instagram, make it the first slide as well. Maybe like content notice, and then you want to write something about the content. If they're not in the right mental space to maybe deal with such a sensitive topic, they can just skip it completely. If you are using a post, let's say like Facebook, you can start your caption with content notice and then put maybe a few like character breaks between the warning and the paragraphs. So if you have any really explicit material, maybe you could post the content warning on the post itself and then write a few comments saying, warning, this is going to be the explicit image, and then post the image with the image description actually in the comment. And the same applies for seizure-inducing visuals. Now, don't provide seizure-inducing visuals. Don't put flashing animations in any of your content, but if for some reason you did, then you want to do a content notice first that says, warning, may have flashing lights. But again, we don't need a headache or a migraine triggered just because you wanted to use a really cool flashing animation. I would suggest steering away from that. No pun intended. Slide 26, accessible censoring. This is my favorite slide of the presentation because I get to swear. Don't censor a word using an asterisk or special characters. People will put an @ symbol or spell out words with characters or things like that to avoid the algorithm shadow banning them or censoring them. But it is so inaccessible to screen reading devices. They would read out everything. A good accessible way to censor words are to spell out the words with spaces. For example, here we have an inaccessible swear word, sh*T for shit. Whereas if we want to make an accessible swear word, we can say shit. And now you just went to a really professional event to learn how to swear with Jess today. I hope we all learned something new. Slide 27, video or audio. So here I have an example post with open captions, described audio, and a transcript. So this is an actual reel I made on Instagram using Descript. We have a screenshot of my caption. There's a few comments there and a few likes. So you can see how I used my voice to describe the situation. When you just have captions on a no audio post, then someone who is blind or low vision still won't be able to know what you're doing. So I'm going to play that for you now.
Jessica with a blank expression, nodding and slow blinking while people say accessibility is trending. Jessica with a deeply concerned expression, wondering what the heck she's been doing for the past 30 years. Jessica swaying her head back and forth dancing, accepting it can lead to a more accessible future. Hopefully. Then raises one eyebrow.
In this example, I didn't fully describe myself yet because it was a short reel and I didn't have time to do that. In this case, I did open captions because Instagram doesn't allow for closed captioning, which is when you actually upload your SRT file or your subtitles file, similar to how YouTube works or Facebook videos. And I think Twitter's been moving towards that as well. Now, the auto-generated captions on Instagram suck. They're not accurate. So I turn that off and I actually burn the captions into my video as a backup. Since that's not accessible to screen readers, I also provide a transcript of the video itself in my caption. For the future, I could actually say, funny reel of Jessica, a white disabled person sitting in a wheelchair with short brown hair, glasses, light olive skin, and green eyes, and a really big gray sweater in her bedroom. And then I would go into the transcript. Okay, slide 28. Now we're going to go into a tutorial of making the video. First, I recorded my video on my phone. I wanted a silent video, so I recorded my audio for the description separately, and then I opened up Descript on my desktop computer, and I uploaded all the files. It then automatically creates a transcript for you. I kind of balance auto transcription, and then I go back and fix in any errors. Now, because it's Instagram, I created fancy captions in the app. If you're posting to Facebook or YouTube or any other social media platform that supports SRT files, you actually skip the fancy captions steps and go straight to export. Closed captions are the ideal thing. That's what we want to strive for, but not all social media platforms allow for it. Slide 29. To the left, I have a screenshot of a video example that I have in Descript. This is cropped, so on the right side, you would see the actual video itself, but on the left side, you would see the transcript all written out. You can correct it, you could cut it out, or you could actually view the media and things like that. That's step 1. On the right side, we have step 2, which is how we would create fancy captions. Wherever you want the captions to show up, you would highlight that text. And then you click the little plus icon at the top, and a little dialog box pops up that says, what would you like to insert? And search for fancy captions. Slide 30. Here's a full screen example of what happens after you've created fancy captions. There's a purple box that shows up on the timeline at the bottom, as well as on the transcript. There's a little purple line to indicate that that's where it ends. And then on the right side, you'll see this purple dialog box that pops up. And to the far right, you can edit the captions clip. So you can change the layout, you can change the font size, the alignment, the opacity, the fill, if you want to stroke on it. Slide 31, exporting with Descript. When you're done your video, you can click export and this little dialog box will pop up. I'm honestly not a video content creator. I use the file export options. I've highlighted text, subtitles, and video. The text is the actual TXT file. It's the transcript. If you want to copy that and then paste it into your social media post, subtitles are your SRT files that you would upload on an app like YouTube or Facebook desktop allows for that. And the video file. Slide 32. Platform-specific workarounds. Slide 33. Adding audio to Instagram stories. This is going to be a bit of a hack because currently Instagram stories don't allow screen readers to read out text-based or post-sharing stories. And the actual content of the story itself is not readable for screen readers. I use 2 apps when I'm doing this. I use my T2S app and my UCut video editor. We have 2 screenshots to the right. The first screenshot on my phone is of an Instagram story, and I've highlighted the little download icon because instead of posting, we want to download this image. Then the second screenshot is highlighting the app we're going to use. Slide 34. I have 4 screenshots here. So the first 2 screenshots are my talk to text app. I wrote basically the alt text for it. I wrote Instagram post by user at ODEE.Jessica, small text acting as a border. Design updates with Oddi.Jessica. Large text in the middle, advanced bookings in 2022. So you can have that play back for you, make sure you're happy with the way it sounds. And then you would click the 3 dots in the top corner. On the second screenshot, it shows you that once you click the 3 dots, you then click export as audio file. A little dialog box will pop up and you click MP3 format. Go into the UCut app, which is the third screenshot, click new projects. On the 4th screenshot at the end, it will open up a dialog box of the image you want to use. I clicked that Instagram story we saved. Slide 35. I have 4 more screenshots for you. The first screenshot shows the timeline and the working page for UCut. So you could see the advanced bookings in 2022 is on the top screen. And at the bottom, it shows that as a timeline. Now we want to add our audio. So we click that little music icon, and then in screenshot number 2, I have a number 1 labeled at the bottom. I have a number 2 labeled at the top corner, and then a number 3 labeled for like the dialog box that will pop up. So in number 1, you'll see that there's a yellow bar that kind of popped up. That's the music file. You have to click that little arrow and drag out the timeline of the post to match the audio. That way the post stays up for as long as you're speaking. Then you want to save your video, which is the number 2 step at the top. And a dialog box will pop up. You just click save again. Make sure it's 180p resolution, 30 frames per second is good. The third screenshot is now we're back to Instagram. Make a new story and upload that video from the UCut app. Then you have to re-add in your user tag. If you don't do that, it won't tag the person you're sharing. So in the 4th screenshot, you'll see that I've highlighted that little text that I made with Oddi.Jessica. And if your story expands more than 1 slide, then just keep re-adding that tag to each of the video clips, and then click send to or upload to your stories, and you're good to go. Slide 36. Further research. I'm not on all social media platforms. I do the best I can with the ones I'm on. I've actually shared a ton of resources at the end of this deck that go into the basic accessibility improvements and tutorials for most social media platforms, as well as all the tools I use. Because we have to be aware in this industry of advocacy burnout. But another great way to get further research is to follow disabled people, follow accessibility advocates, and follow those hashtags on your social media platform. It's a great way to keep up to date with the latest practices and bugs. Everything I've learned that I shared with you today was because either a friend told me, a colleague posted about it, or I looked it up and figured out what the standards were. So don't be afraid to do your research. I'm so excited for the Q&A so that we can go through any specifics you may have. But if I didn't cover anything today, trust me, you will find it in this resources package you'll be getting in the deck and the handout. Thank you. If you want to get in touch with me, my email is oddi.jessica@gmail.com. And I've linked to my website, jessicaoddi.com. The image description here is me, a white disabled woman in a power wheelchair. I'm smiling in front of a sunset and foliage with dark brown straight hair, and I'm wearing a short sleeve black button-down shirt. This photo was taken by my dear friend, Gary Tran, who is a wonderful photographer in Toronto with a disability. And let's get started with the Q&A.
All right. Well, thanks, Jessica. That was great. I know that social media is often overlooked when it comes to accessibility specifically. So that's great. I think everybody can use a lot of this information. So just wanted to remind everybody again that if you have any questions for Jessica, go ahead and drop them into the Q&A, and we will get started with these. So first up, we have a question from Kelsey. And they ask, what do you suggest if accessible username combinations for your organization are already taken?
Hi, everyone. And thank you for the question, Kelsey. I'm just going to do a quick visual description of myself first, since I didn't jump on until after my presentation. So I am sitting in my power wheelchair in my front room office. My sister's computer is behind me, and you can see unfinished baseboards to the one side of me. I have light olive skin. I'm wearing glasses, my brown hair with like mid-length, I'd say, and I'm wearing a shiny button-up top for you today. So to answer Kelsey's question, I know finding accessible username combinations are so hard, especially when most of them are taken nowadays. Unfortunately, sometimes there might not be everything that we can do if it is already taken. So the way I try to do it is then I still write out my username in Pascal case or camel case, like capitalizing the letters, if I couldn't find an accessible combination. So when I'm like, embedding my handle on my Instagram post, for instance, I will use like capital letters there to differentiate, or in my image description. That way I know it'll be read out properly. So if you can't find it, yeah, that would be the way to work around it. Because unfortunately, we can't do anything if someone has our username unless we message them and they really don't want it anymore. We can do a trade.
Right. Next, Jaren asks, do you have any more suggestions for great fonts to use?
Absolutely. Personally, I always kind of go to the slabs a little bit more. I think it's that perfect combination between a sans serif and a serif. I've met a few users who actually do like serif fonts for the distinction in the characters, like more like when you're reading on a paper. But I do know that the accessibility standard is more to use sans serif. So like I do love like Roboto Mono, Source Sans Pro is a really good one. Ubuntu is a good font that I'm a huge fan of. I do like Roboto Slab, but in smaller doses because I feel like it can feel like a lot when you put it all together. PT Sans is another really good one. And all of these are like free fonts available on Google Fonts. So the creative license is there and you're good to go as well. But yeah, any good one that has like, I like even when it's a sans serif, but the L kind of bends, the lowercase L bends a little bit at the bottom so you can differentiate it from a capital I. Or like I said, like an inconsolata, like the slab will have the I with the dash on the top and the bottom without getting too fancy as serifs kind of get into. And yes, Nunato is a great font. I saw that in the chat from Ozzy.
Next, we have a question from Alice. What do you suggest when sharing others' content? Should it be checked before posting? And if so, what is your recommendation for posting it?
Yes. So depends on what we're talking about. If we're doing those like reshare apps and things like that, where we're actually like reposting someone else's post on, let's say, Instagram, you'll have to add in the alt text again yourself because a lot of those apps don't have it put in. So you're going to have to then go and edit your post. If the original post has an image description already, then credit them for the image description as well, because we shouldn't forget about the labor that goes into that and the amount of physical work that we put into writing our own image descriptions. So if you're doing like a reshare, you can be like post from so-and-so, image description provided by them as well. And then you can like reshare their post on those sorts of apps. If you're sharing on, let's say like Facebook and you're literally just clicking the share button, I found Facebook sometimes doesn't even share the original post. Sometimes it does. So I automatically by default add an image description to my share of whatever it is, because obviously when you're sharing another person's post, you cannot change their alt text since you don't have that capability. So I always, as a practice, especially in a Facebook group that I run, is that we write an image description out in a caption. And, make sure we're tagging the user of the original post too, so we don't lose that credit for their content.
Next, Ozzy says, wow, this is so helpful and informative. Thank you. Are any of the apps that you use paid? And they're sorry if they may have missed that. They had to jump in late.
No problem. I didn't mention actually if they were free or not. So the Talk to Text app, or the T2S, and the UCut app are both free because I didn't feel like paying for my social media shares. Descript, however, I do pay for it so that I can remove the watermark. And I obviously tend to edit a lot of videos at a time. So yes, that one I do pay for a subscription.
Kylie asks, do you have any specific hashtags or accounts that you suggest we follow and interact with?
Yes, I do. And I'm just pulling out the resources. In general, like there's hashtags like A11Y, which is like the ally community for like web development and things like that, which is a really good thing to follow. I'm going through I think I provided some in my resources document, but like hashtag, like I always follow the disabled and cute in those ones too, because then I get all the influencers on Instagram and I love that. There is a Twitter one here, Twitter accessibility. So there's a Twitter disability account, Twitter ally, and hashtag disability Twitter is a really good one. As well as like I follow like disabled artists, disabled communities. There's a Facebook group too, I think, and I'll paste it in the chat. There's like the WCAG Ally Professionals group, which is really good. And I do have a list of other accounts on my resources page on my website that shows a bunch of disability spaces and community spaces as well. I'll paste that in the chat as well.